Well, usually we don't get such a sellout crowd on an Alaska-specific issue, but I think you have learned from the media accounts from Sunday and now this morning that this administration has effectively declared war on Alaska. That's my view of it. And those are some pretty tough words. But what we saw on Sunday with the announcement that this administration is going to move towards permanent wilderness status for ANWR, and what this administration is poised to do the balance of this week based on conversations with the Secretary of the Interior and her deputy, it is a 1, 2, 3 kick to the gut of Alaska's economy. And we have said as a delegation that we will not stand it, we will not tolerate, and we will do everything that we can to push back against an administration that has taken a look at Alaska and decided it's a nice little snow globe up there, and we're going to keep it that way. That's not what you do to a state, any state. Our governor had a conversation with the secretary this weekend and reminded her that in his State of the Budget address this week, we're a state that is looking at some pretty serious deficiencies in our budget right now, about a $3.5 billion hole. And this is how an administration is going to work with us. Take all of what is left of ANWR that was in a formerly non-wilderness status area and put it all off limits now, forever, period, to then further restrict our opportunities in the offshore by taking areas that had previously been subject to deferral and now withdrawing them completely. And then the further kick in the area where they've said all along, don't go to ANWR. ANWR is too special. Go over here to the NPRA, the National Petroleum Reserve. So what do we try to do? You get private operators, they're saying we're ready to go, but they need to have a road, an 8-mile road. Where does this sound familiar? 10-mile, one-lane gravel non-commercial use road in Eisenbeck. Not going to be able to get one here in NPRA either because of the mitigation costs, the schedule risk, the uncertainty coming from this administration. You've got an operator that is weighing right now whether or not they can move forward in NPRA. So in 1 week, we're going to go ahead, we're going to lock up ANWR permanently, we're going to put off areas offshore that would allow Alaska to help fill up that Trans-Alaska pipeline. And oh, by the way, we're going to put so many added costs, mitigation costs, and a separation facility that's going to cost $20 million, and say, well, go ahead, Alaska, do whatever. Except you can't access the resources because we're going to put them off limits to you. And if it's not off limits, we're going to make it so hard and so expensive that no operator is going to want to do it. Is this how you treat a state? I made a comment this weekend that got a little attention, and I'll repeat it again. This administration is willing to negotiate with Iran, but they won't negotiate with Alaska. They're just going to take an approach that this is our way. We think you're too special. Well, we do think we're pretty special. We've got some amazing people up there. The native people who live in this area, in the 1002 area. What about respect for them? When are we going to hear that from this administration? So when we say that we feel that this is a frontal attack on the state of Alaska and our ability to develop resources for the good of Alaskans and for the good of the country, this is not just about Alaska. Our oil comes to you guys down here. But if that pipe is empty, What's that going to do to prices? So we've got a battle in front of us. And my hope is that as a united delegation, working with our governor, working with our legislature, working with Alaskans, we will raise the awareness of this issue beyond where it is today, which is just a very emotional issue when it comes to ANWR. But I would suggest to the administration that they know that the fight is on and we are not backing down. With that, I'm going to turn to my colleague, Senator Sullivan, and then to the Congressman for all Alaska, who's going to wrap it up.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Senator Murkowski. I would agree. The battle is joined. Ironically, for me, first time I heard about this, when you talk about consultation with the administration, this weekend I was out training Marines. I'm still a Marine Corps Reserve officer. So the idea of the battle being joined, we're ready. Still haven't heard from anyone in the administration on the plan, what they intend to do. And that's one of the key things here. There's a lot of talk about consultation. Look at the laws that we're, as Alaskans, very familiar with. The NILCA has over 100 provisions. The Secretary shall consult with, name the group in Alaska. Okay? It's not happening. We are viewed as just another stakeholder. We're not just another stakeholder. We're the other sovereign. And yet, the Center for Biological Diversity and other groups, I guarantee you, got a much more in-depth briefing from this administration than the officials from the state, than the governor of the state, than the Alaska Native people. And that's got to stop. This is classic President Obama tactic. Release a plan with no chance of passing the Congress. Meantime, take legally dubious action through executive orders to do what you know Congress won't do. We've seen it before. We've seen it on immigration. We've seen it on NPRA. They took half of NPRA, a part of Alaska that's not a national park. It's the National Petroleum Reserve of Alaska, set aside by Congress for oil and gas development. Half of that's off the table. And now the ANWR coastal plain. No dispute whatsoever, has to have congressional authorization to designate it a wilderness. It's not going to happen in this Congress. So they're going to move forward with an executive order to do it anyways. And let me say one thing about the timing of this. You know, who knows why they did it when they did, but there's something that I think in terms of the press you guys might want to pay a little bit more attention to. There was a legal case. The state of Alaska sued the Obama administration. There were oral arguments in federal court in Alaska last week on what we put forward, a comprehensive management plan to explore ANWR. Where did this come from? When the administration was putting forward their CCP, we went to them and said, hey, we have ideas. We want to work with you. Here's some ideas on what you need to do in the 1002 area. Ignored us, ignored us, ignored us. We came and we showed them this plan. Under ANILCA, we think the Secretary of Interior has to approve this plan. She said no. This plan would allow for responsible exploration in the coastal area. There were oral arguments last week. We think we have a strong case as a state. And if we win this case, that's going to really change the debate because it's going to show for the first time that we do have the ability with responsible exploration. So let me conclude by saying one other thing on that exploration issue. You know, I think many people here view, all right, another ANWR debate. Maybe from some people's views, the debate is getting stale. We've heard these before. It's critically important to our state, of course, but I think the debate has not kept up with the technology. It's time to change the terms of the debate, not only in terms of what they're doing, but we have the ability, and it's all laid out in this plan, to look at the 1002, the coastal area, figure out what's in it with 3D technology, new technology, without any impact on the tundra. Zero. Zero. Why wouldn't the federal government want to do that? The federal government is managing these lands for the American people, supposedly. Why wouldn't they want to know what's there? They want to keep their head in the tundra and not know anything. We want to understand what's there and move forward. This is critical not only to Alaskans, but as Senator Murkowski said, critical to the national security of our country. You know, the President gave his State of the Union the other day, painted a picture of the world that I think most people thought was rather inaccurate, rather delusional in terms of the national security challenges that we have facing the United States, whether it's Iran, whether it's ISIS. We're going to have hearings. We're going to figure out what the American people are focused on in terms of a broad-based strategy to keep our citizens safe. But whatever that strategy is going to look like, it has to have the element of the United States as an energy superpower once again. Has to. And yet these decisions by the administration, these actions by the administration clearly undermine that ability in terms of a broader national security, and I think it undermines our national security going forward. So very disappointed, and as Senator Murkowski said, we're going to fight this. Thank you.
Thank you, Senators. I've been here a long time and watched this battle over the years, and actually passed it out of the House 12 times on ANWR, and passed the Senate one time, and President Clinton vetoed it. This is much to do about nothing. This should be developed. George Obama, and it's King George Obama, really believes he doesn't have to acknowledge laws that were passed by the Congress. He's done this on numerous occasions. He ignores this. He lectures the legislative body. You're not important. I'm the king. Disgusting for the nation, disgusting for the people. This man, this person, has gone completely wacko. This is an attack upon the state, attack upon previous laws, attack upon the nation. Now, I asked him, I watched him in the airplane and made this speech. He's never even been there. Cost him, I think the last time I heard is $500 million every time he gets on that airplane, total cost. Flying across saying, I'm going to save this pristine area. This an area that has animals and all these unique things. He's never been there. You go to Prudhoe Bay, we have more animals now than we've ever had before. The idea of man and wildlife can't be compatible is stupid. What he's done here is we will not only fight it, it has to be passed by Congress. I'm counting on my senators because I don't have that much authority in the House being the one poor lone member. I just want to take these two guys and hug them right now. I want them to have no money for the Interior Department to implement this cause against the nation, against the state of Alaska. And I might go a little further. His little Charlotte that works for him, the Secretary of Interior, I might suggest respectfully, she doesn't know what she's talking about. What has occurred here is wrong for everyone. No consultation, no understanding, no talking about the native people that have 96,000 acres of land in the middle of ANWR, guaranteed for their social and economic well-being. Taking that away. So much for the first Americans. This person is out of line for the nation and for the state of Alaska. We will fight this battle. I will pray, and God help us, that the progressive movement, we don't elect another progressive president in 2016, will undo this. Because this is the right thing to do under the Constitution of the state of Alaska and under the congressional laws that we passed under Scoop Jackson and Ted Stevens and myself. Not to accept that, ignore, thumb their nose at the legislative body. I am King George. I am King George Obama. Thank you. Now, questions.
Senator Murkowski, can you talk about your reaction when Secretary Jewell called you and spoke to you and told you about the ANWR decision? And can you characterize your relationship with Secretary Jewell right now? How much has it affected that relationship? Can you work with her going forward?
Well, I wish that I could tell you that she contacted me. She didn't. I had to call her. Now, in fairness, she left a voicemail and said, I've asked my chief of staff to come visit with you this afternoon because we're going to be announcing some 3 Alaska-related initiatives next week and wanted to give you a heads up. And so Tommy Boudreau came to my office late Friday afternoon and walked me through. And I have to tell you, my reaction to him was pretty visceral, understandably so. It was not just ANWR, as I've made mention, but also that the administration intends to lay out the 5-year lease sale that will take additional offshore areas and put them into withdrawal status. And then, again, the triple gut punch was the discussion about what we call Greater Moose's Tooth 1, which is a development area in the National Petroleum Reserve that Conoco has been trying to develop. And they outlined what the requirements for Conoco to advance the mitigation costs as well as additional requirements. And really the stunning arrogance that, well, Conoco's an oil company, they make money, so what's $40 million in mitigation costs? At some point in time, you have producers that say, we're not developing this because it's no longer economic. And when you have stipulations and conditions that are placed on you that are no longer economic, now I don't know what Conoco's going to do. They're weighing all this. But that was, those were three pretty consequential and substantial issues impacting Alaska to be announced over the next week. This is not over the next 2 years of this administration. It was just kind of a, we're just going to kick you while you're down, and then we're going to kick you again, and then we're going to do it one more time just for good measure. And my response was, I don't know whether you just don't give a rip about Alaska or whether you just don't think about us at all. So I called the secretary. She was in New Mexico talking about some renewable project that apparently was a big deal in New Mexico. But she apparently wasn't planning on calling me. So I let it be known that I'm not too happy.
Senator, you're in a unique position being the chairwoman of Energy, Natural Resources
Just don't
and
fund the
the Interior Spending Panel on Appropriations. Can you talk about how you might approach legislating on this issue going forward, and particularly since ANWR's been a hard...
Don't show her a whole card.
Well, what I have made clear to the secretary and anybody else that's willing to listen, we're going to utilize every single tool that we have. And I think the good news for us is we got a few more tools now. And in terms of what they may be, I think you will see them play out. But again, this is not something where, as a delegation, as a state, we're going to just accept what the administration is proposing here. We're going to fight back, and it's going to be a coordinated fight. And I think what you're seeing here today is there's no daylight among your delegation on this. There's no daylight with our new governor and his administration or our legislature. I spoke with the president of the State House yesterday and talking about what they're going to do. So there are tools, and the good news for us is there are more tools now than there were in the previous Congress, and I intend to exercise them, as I know all of my colleagues will.
Yeah, you mentioned that some areas are going to be put into withdrawal in the OCS plan. What areas are those?
At this point in time, we have not seen the actual map from Interior. All I can do is tell you what I was told, was that areas that have been deferred in prior lease sales will now be placed in placed in a withdrawal status, as well as additional areas that had not previously been deferred would be included. We'll see if the administration is going to unroll their 5-year lease sale on Tuesday, as was indicated to me. Maybe they've changed their minds after listening to the outrage from us. We'll see.
The problem we have there is when the people have had the leases already. Shell's been doing this for 5 years at about $6 billion. It'd be unwise for them not to be able to expand if they drill and find oil. And what they're going to do, is my understanding, they're going to actually circle the existing lease and make that a withdrawal area, otherwise shrinking the capability. And I'll be surprised if Shell drills. And that's just, stupid as far as I'm concerned. So that's what they're going to do.
Senator,
Could you elaborate briefly on the tools? You don't seem to want to go into detail, but are they budgetary tools?
They're
litigation
budget,
tools?
legislative, and litigation. Anything else?
Well, as I mentioned, one of the things that we've been doing, before I had this job, I was the Attorney General and DNR Commissioner for the state of Alaska. So the state has been coordinating with Senator Murkowski, Congressman Young for a long time. And we have a lot of tools that we're also using at the state. As I mentioned, there's a case right now. It's a big case that we put forward a plan, said work with us. By the way, one of the things that's such a frustration for Alaskans, all these consultation requirements, they just don't do them. They just don't pay attention to the other sovereign in the room. So that required us to sue them. There was oral arguments on this case last week, and the key to the case is essentially a very simple case. We believe that ANILCA requires the Secretary of Interior to approve that exploration plan, and if the federal judge says that they agree with the state of Alaska, that's going to be a big, big deal, because then we can start looking at moving forward and figuring out what's there, as this federal government should be doing, as opposed to just ignoring it. So that's one tool that the state's already using.
Caller then back.
Senator Murkowski, what do you think this move says about the administration's broader policy toward the oil and gas industry? And do you know what else the offshore leasing plan is going to include, perhaps opening up parts of the east coast off the Atlantic, and the Atlantic Ocean? And then related, what kind of impact do you think low oil prices could have on companies being economically driven to drill either in and around Alaska and in other parts of the country?
This administration has said that it endorses an all-of-the-above policy. I would suggest to you that after these announcements, that's an all-of-the-above policy for everywhere except Alaska. Just why bother? Now they'll say, the Secretary will tell you, no, I support moving forward within the NPRA. Don't get me wrong there. Well, demonstrate it then. Work to make sure that there is a plan that can go forward instead of piling on cost after cost after cost and saying, well, you're an oil company, you can afford it. These are private companies that aren't going to do anything if it's not economic. So I think the simple message to Alaska is we just do not believe that you should be developing your resources. And we're talking oil and gas here, but Congressman Young has been around for a long time. I was born and raised in the Tongass National Forest. That national forest isn't harvesting anything right now, and it's not because of lack of resource. It's because of policies that said, we're cutting you off. We're shutting you down. Mining is one area where historically we've been able as a state to access our resources and enjoy some of the benefit. But one of the legal proceedings that we have going on right now is whether an amazing mineral resource in southwestern Alaska should be allowed to even submit a plan. And the EPA has come in and said, we're gonna cut it off before you even make application. So as Alaskans, when we talk about feeling like this is a frontal attack on our state, it's not just because the administration made this statement about ANWR. This is no surprise. We've known that the president never endorsed opening up ANWR. But what's happening is this double, triple, quadruple whammy. Just kind of boom, boom, boom. Forget it, Alaska. Lock it up. Lock it up. We're too special. Well, we are special, and our people are special. But our people, like every American, wants to be able to enjoy the land that we live, while at the same time educating our kids, having a decent job, being able to afford our energy costs. We're not asking for anything special. We want to be the good stewards of the land, and we will demonstrate time and time again that we're capable, more than capable of doing that. We have the highest environmental standards of any state when it comes to our oil industry. come up there and take a look. But you know what? People don't want to because it's cold right now. It's miserable cold. But this is where we live. And this is where we work. So show us a little bit of respect. You've asked a question about low oil prices. You take it, Don.
Oh, no, oil prices, the larger oil companies will drill and drill because it's a long-term investment. And consumption oil will continue to go up regardless of what this George will say. We're going to consume fossil fuels now until, most of you are dead in this room. I certainly will be. And I like the lower prices. I don't like what it's done to the state of Alaska, but that's something we have to expect. We should learn from that. So they will drill offshore. They will drill in Petfor. They will drill in Anwar. The industry itself has got a surplus of oil because of fracking and we get it off the private land. That's where most of this oil has come from. So I'm not terribly pessimistic about the lower prices. That's stopping investment in. But what happens when you increase the prices, there is a bottom line. They say, we'll go to Nigeria. We'll go to Venezuela again. And that's the larger oil companies. And that's something people have to recognize. And I don't think any of you in this room, you wonder why the economy's come back right now? You got more money to spend. You just actually made $2 a gallon. You got more money to spend for things you want to now. And nobody doesn't understand if we don't keep that price low, our economy will go in the tank again. And it will be kept low, and eventually we'll come back in Alaska and we'll be able to achieve the goals we have to do. So, this is a big project. As far as, this whole thing, it's the conduct of this person that's in the White House. You all ought to be deeply concerned. This is not America. To have a person ignore the Constitution, ignore the legislative body, ignore the people of America. You ought to be really concerned about that, especially if you have kids. Do you want a society that has no freedom or the right to take and improve your lot, controlled by the progressive government? If that's what you want, go to Europe. Go to Greece. Follow the austerity program. That's the thing that concerns me the most. This is not just about this oil. This is about the ignoring the people, ignoring the will of the people in the state of Alaska.
Can I say one more thing about the price? Because people are paying attention to what's going on with the price of oil, and they like the fact that they're paying less at the pump. As the congressman mentioned, it's more money in their pocket, and that's a good thing. But keep in mind how we got to this place where the price is better at the pump for you. It's not because Venezuela or Saudi Arabia decided to do us a favor. It is because we have been producing more. So it goes to the fact that supply matters. When you have more supply, it increases your prices. So Americans, if you like the fact that maybe in your neighborhood you're seeing prices below $2 a gallon and you like that, then you should want to do or encourage those things that will bring about more domestic production. Things like gaining resource from the National Petroleum Reserve, from offshore Alaska, where the potential for us is extraordinary as a nation, and within the onshore, within Anwar. An opportunity to fill up Alaska's pipeline that's sitting right now at less than half full. So if you like the low prices, then you should be thinking, how can the low prices continue? More domestic production, and that means coming from Alaska.
I will say that in addition to the price, though, one of our biggest concerns that you see, and we think it's gotten to the point where we believe it's willful, is that every opportunity, every project, Senator Murkowski talks about what Conoco's doing, but there has been a number of projects, roads to be built. Everything with this federal government in Alaska is delayed, is delayed, is delayed. And we actually think it's willful, that it's the weapon of choice of this administration to actually kill projects. And it's a big problem.
We have time for about one more.
Question for any of you. What sort of consultation have you had or assurances have been given that new mapping and drilling technology will not place into harm's way the wildlife that's in the Anwar.
It's already been proven. I mean, you look at the old Prudhoe Bay and the new Prudhoe Bay, the footprint is about that big. Wildlife is not harmed. The only person that hurts wildlife is a human being itself when he's shooting them. I know a little bit about that. You know, they will be actually domesticated now. They walk around and say hi. That's not the problem. This is all a big, you know, I've been fighting this battle for 44 years. And we have wolves sleeping with the sheep. And you guys believed it. I mean, duh. I mean, that's the nonsense. And the public guy in New York and Miami or Philadelphia or San Francisco, oh, we got to save those poor little animals. It doesn't affect them. Never has. It's all a myth, easily sold to the less knowledgeable people. And that affects us. You know, I mean, I can go on. I got to go.
And that's that's the point on the debate not having kept up with the technology, meaning we have ways in which, whether it's ice roads, ice pads for drilling, only in the winter, where we do these things, shoot 3D seismic, that literally has zero impact on the tundra, literally. And you know, we need to make sure that that element of the debate people are more aware of, because it's significant developments that have no impact. And that's what the state of Alaska did in terms of a plan. We want this administration to work with us and help approve that.
And just one follow-on to that, because this is significant. There is a very keen sensitivity that each of us has to ensure that development of our resources in the North Slope area does not impact the subsistence lifestyle of the people who live there. Subsistence defines them. There's no grocery stores close by. They need to be able to hunt and fish and harvest the whale. And so the steps that, for instance, Conoco has gone through in order to get the permits to explore offshore. You know, you may wonder why it's such a short season. It's not necessarily due to the ice. It's because Shell has agreed in concert with the whaling captains that there are specific times of the year that they are not only not allowed to explore, they're not even allowed to have their vessels out there with engines running. Unheard of. Do you think in North Dakota or in Louisiana, when the geese are coming down or the deer are moving through, that there's an agreement that you're going to shut everything down because you're going to disturb the deer? No. In Alaska, the conditions and the requirements are, most people would say, incredible. We can't believe that you can operate that way. I just came from a meeting with a woman who was born and raised in Barrow, whose family subsists off of the whale. They are the people of the whale. And so when they say they accept the drilling, the potential for drilling offshore, it's only with those requirements, knowing what has been put in place in terms of protections. So whether it's caring for the whale as they are migrating through, or whether it is ensuring that during the calving season there are limitations, or limitations on any exploration whatsoever when the polar bear are denning. Do you think that Alaskans are just kind of running roughshod over the animals that are there? No. Have we been working to try to ensure that every aspect of development that we do is done with the highest environmental standards possible, in conjunction with respect for the people who live up there and their subsistence needs? This is going to be an interesting time for the Alaska delegation, educating the rest of the country. What happens up in Alaska, how we develop our resources, why we believe so strongly and so passionately that we are doing so with a care for the land and the critters that are on it Well, at the same time, we're allowing the human beings to access a resource and to have a quality of life that you all expect here. We're all hunkering down for the big snowstorm here. Well, you know what? People back home live that, day in and day out. And it's dang hard. They pay the highest energy costs of anybody in the country. Anybody in the country. The highest transportation costs, the highest cost of living. But this is their land. This is where they live. This is where they've been for thousands of years. But they want the same thing that I want and Senator Sullivan wants for their kids. They want to be able to have a good education. They want to be able to send them off to college. They want to know that they're not going to freeze in the dark.